As you enter, candlelight and the flickering of the fireplace fills the room with an intoxicating atmosphere. Lovers gaze upon each other, holding hands over a plate of decadent food, and libations dot the table. The food is delicious, and the lovers' inn is idyllic with the bard's music gently caressing the couples throughout the room. Sounds romantic, right? Just in time for Valentine's Day, too.
Ugh, sounds ridiculous. Taverns are supposed to be full of rabble-rousers, ale and sticky floors, with patrons yelling across the room ready to start bar fights. You know, that sort of thing.
Ugh, what kind of taverns are you people going to? Can't it just be, like, I don't know, calm, not overly raucous or sickeningly sweet? Like, just a regular run-of-the-mill tavern?
Sounds like someone's boring and unimaginative today.
Yeah, lack of depth and creativity. Plain old run-of-the-mill. How basic.
Whoa. Listen, plain old run-of-the-mill doesn't have to be basic. I can build it exactly the way I want, and so can you. JB Media has prefabricated taverns available for you if you lack the vision or time to make your own. But for those of us that want to build it exactly the way we see it in our heads, they have drag and drop bundles so you can create your very own space and atmosphere for your party. With loads of assets like tables and chairs, candles, torches and fireplaces, wine racks and barrels. Hey, look at this rug. It really ties the room together, don't you think?
Nah, I think that stag head on the wall is pretty cool. That's my sort of jam.
Yeah, nothing says romantic like a dead deer head on the wall.
But that's what's great about being able to customize your own space. For just $5.99, you can grab the bundle on Roll20 Marketplace, or you can subscribe to the Patreon for monthly assets and exclusive content. You should check them out.
Who? JB Media?
But can I see some of their work before buying?
Of course. Go to Instagram and find them at jbmedia.dnd to see examples of their work.
Sweet, I'll check them out right away.
It looks like there's some pretty cool things on here, and the Patreon isn't that expensive either. Thanks for that recommendation, Kristin.
Yeah, can't wait to see what you all come up with. All of you listening, be sure to check them out at jbmedia.dnd on Instagram and jbmedia on Patreon.
Oh, and by the way, did you know JB Media is the sponsor of this episode? Because this is a Wicked Cool Kids podcast. Hi! You, yeah, the wicked one. Yeah, I mean you. You might not be young and you might be wrapped up in your cozies and dressing gown, but if you are here, you are one of the Wicked Cool Kids, and you are so welcome. I'm Joe, the host of this episode, and unfortunately, while I have an atrocious memory, I'm also absolutely useless at note-taking. I'm dyslexic, which definitely doesn't help, but playing tabletop roleplay games is already a difficult balancing act of engaging with roleplay, planning what actions you might take, working out the puzzles that the DM has laid out for you, actively listening to your fellow players. Do we even have time to take notes? Are they actually useful, or just an unnecessary distraction? Everybody's different, and learning from other people's perspective can be a powerful thing. So, with me, I have Kristin, Lee, and Jason to shoot the breeze and hopefully come away with some hot tips so I can stop just relying on Kristin's notes instead of my own brain. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So, who here does take notes as a player, Kristin?
Oh, I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Yeah, I'd take notes.
I've been known from time to time to take a note or two.
Yours is a problem, though.
Yes, it's a problem.
Is it a problem? I feel like it's been very helpful on many occasions.
It definitely has, and I feel like going back to my intro point, it's almost to the point that I start relying on you, which is a problem of itself. I don't want to become too lazy just expecting someone else to do it. We'll circle back to that though. But Lee, you do take notes.
Yeah, I take notes. They're not nowhere near as intense as Kristin's. No, it's true though. So, usually write down key information rather than everything that's going on, just key points that I can put down, so more or less bullet points, and then expand off that anything that I think would be of interest. Sometimes the information is absolutely useless and never comes up again, but to me it stuck out, so I put it down.
That makes sense. How about you, Jason? Because I know you like to sort of pace around and collect your thoughts when you're playing. So do you have the opportunity to sit and actually write any of it down?
Well, when I'm playing, I tend to sit down. I'm not too bad when I'm a player. It's when I'm a DM I tend to walk around, but that's kind of fine because I play in my own world. So I have very little notes when I'm a DM. I have extensive notes when I'm a player.
I like it. So the first thing
Sometimes he even draws pictures too, right?
I feel like that's a
I
really
think
good
that's
idea.
fascinating. Yeah.
That's a really good idea. So the first thing I want to know is, as a player, what kind of notes do you take? How and why? Do you note down absolutely everything that you can, or just the major events? Do you use physical paper or digital notes? Do you do it just because it's how you retain information, or because you think it's what should be done? Lee, you already suggested you kind of take down the major events. And I think I know that you do it on paper because you're always talking about finding a new pad for a new campaign.
Yep,
So
I
yeah,
prefer to just put it down in a notepad. I think with me writing it down, the information goes in easier. If I'm scribbling it down, putting it in manually, and it also helps to keep focus on the actual game. I don't have to flick between documents on that or anything. So yeah, key points, just write them down, and if anything else comes up, I can go back and expand on them.
nice. How about you, Jason? What's the how, the why, and the
If I
what
take
kind?
notes down, I feel like they're relevant to the story plot. I'm not taking notes of like side conversations, role play between two characters. That tends to stick, and I build that relationship as I do with friends in real life and remember those moments anyway. But if I think it's plot relevant and it pushes us further in the story, at that point I'm like, this is justified to a note because this is something I can't forget. I can't leave this to memory.
Fair enough. How about you, Kristen? I know you take really quite extensive notes, but is there a focus on like exactly what you're writing down, or are you literally just verbatim writing a history of the events?
Sometimes I decide to take on role of stenographer. But in general, like you kind of led on with your memory being terrible. My memory is not great. I have a lot of other things that are being juggled up here all of the time anyway, and things that real life kind of unfortunately or fortunately take precedence over my D&D games, right? So I feel like I take more notes because I'm constantly wanting to remember all of these things, and I feel like I've read enough Sherlock Holmes and watched enough mystery things that I always feel like there's something that could come back at one point or another that would have seemed completely innocuous in the moment. So if there's anything like that ever that I feel like, oh, this seems too odd to be just a throwaway comment, I'm gonna write it down. And I try to not make my notes so self-centric, just focused on my character. Unfortunately, it happens a lot of times because I am, invested in me and my character. But because I don't want to just do that, I find that I'll try and take note of other people's stuff because I want to be a collective memory for everybody.
That's interesting. I like the fact that Lee, you mentioned that it helps you to stay focused on the game. It's interesting to me because it has the exact opposite effect for me. I am not capable of writing something down and also listening at the same time. And on top of that, my memory is terrible. So if I'm writing something down, I'm missing what's being said, and then will probably also forget why I was writing down what I was writing down.
Is that true for you, whether you're writing on pen and paper or digitally, like on your keyboard?
Yeah.
Because I find that's why I write. Well, it's one of the reasons why I write everything by hand. First of all, it's that tactile memory, right? I'm going through the motions of writing things. I'm seeing myself writing it, and so it just hits different parts of my memory where typing on a keyboard doesn't. But I feel like when I'm typing on a keyboard, I'm more focused on what I'm writing versus when I'm writing with a pen or a pencil, I'm more likely to be able to continue to listen to whatever else is happening around me and just write as we go.
So my handwriting speed is pretty bad. Partly because I have to kind of consciously think about the forming of the letters as I'm writing, which is a challenge in itself. So that disengages me because I'm having to actively think about writing rather than actively thinking about the game. And on a keyboard, I can actually touch type. So in theory, I can just hear it and put it down. But I find that my brain still starts kind of repeating the words that I'm writing down. Like I will be listening to the physical words and just automatically typing them. But then if I was to be conscious about it, I'd realize that actually all that's going through my head is the words and not the context and the meaning and the situation. So it's not like I'm taking in the information. I'm just taking in individual words one by one. So I can't. Yeah. So I can't really write at all. I'm going to be disconnected. So I have a real challenge of I can't not write anything. Because not only do I feel like I should, I can't just rely on other people. I don't feel like that's fair to the people around the table, although I'm sure when I speak to people, they would be, in some cases, okay with it. But it's also for myself, like, there are things that I want to remember that other people might not write down. So I have to kind of get over it and just write it down. And I've got into a position now where I am very selective about my timing. I try to write single words to remind me. So if we find an interesting chalice, I would just write the word chalice. And then at some point when I'm doing nothing else, I will try to remember what that was about and bulk it out if I can. But while I'm doing that, I am not engaging with the game. And if something happens that involves me, you guys will probably have seen it and not necessarily recognized what's happening. I will go like, can you just repeat that, please? 9 times out of 10, that's because I was writing something down.
I recognize it, Joe, because I do the exact same thing. It's really hard to get me to shut up when I'm playing in a game, but when I am quiet, it's because I'm writing down notes of bullet points that I've previously written down as the game's going along. Because sometimes it would be like, oh, it's me, and then I'll have to try and like backtrack. It's like I'm half focused on it, so in the background I'm listening to what's going on, but then it takes me a second to put all that into context when I come back to actually the moment. So I have recognized it, especially you as a player in one of my games, but I do it a lot in Lee's campaign because this is like the notebook for Lee's game. I just sometimes I just go quiet when I'm like, okay, I've got to be quiet for a minute, let them have their part. I can shut up because I've talked extensively anyway, because it's hard to get me to stop role playing at certain points. And I just stay quiet and just start writing stuff down. But then again, same as you, Joe, I'm half focused on what's actually going on in the game then, because it's really difficult to do both at the same time. Because I have to, like you again, really focus on what I'm writing and the structure of the sentences and words. There becomes difficult to not pay attention to what I'm putting down on paper.
Do you think you two would benefit from listening back to a recording of the game? So then there's that pressure of having to be in the moment and paying attention's off you, so you can put down more extensive notes. Or do you feel that the notes you're taking are enough for you to be able to remember key points? Like, have you ever gone back to something and gone, oh shit, I wish I could have remembered that, and not figured out what it was?
I mean, having a video there to watch back on for sure, even if it's just like an audio thing, maybe I can listen to it through the day. It's just actually getting time and the motivation to listen to it before the next game comes along that I'd still struggle with.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and I think Lee, you can too, because we were both in a campaign where it was recorded, visual and audio, and I actually would be 100% no note taking during the session, and I would watch it back, and then I would take notes on that, and I liked being able to not have to also take notes during the session, but that also means that 4-hour game that we played, I have to find 4 hours to listen back to between then and the next game to write all my notes down. And so it has its pros and it has its cons. If I didn't have to note take the way that I feel like I do, then it'd probably just be something I could put on in my car or, on my phone while I was going about my day and kind of listening to it and hoping to retain it there. But I always get really scared that I'm going to forget something, which is why I write it down. Womp womp.
Is it helpful for DMs then, just from player perspective, for the DM to go, oh, you should note this down? just before anything, or at the end of a scene, or before a scene starts, for the DM to be like this, to have like a verbal kind of like safe word that'll go, oh, the information that is about to come is important, maybe to the context of the story.
I love that and hate it.
Yeah, I
In
think it
equal
would be a
measure.
great thing to have in a game, but then you sort of taken away from having the players' concentration there, and I wouldn't say making them work for it, but there are certain things you want the players to figure out for themselves, and if you point out like this is key information, you should write down, they might miss normally.
Yeah,
Sort of like
I feel if it's a
takes
puzzle
away from it.
situation, I feel like you can probably go without doing that kind of thing. But if it's like lore based in the world, maybe, or it leads to the bigger context of the story that you're telling.
Yeah,
I think there have been several times though where, because I can't speak from the DM perspective on that, but as the player, there have been DMs who have had this big, maybe lore dump that one of the NPCs gave us. For example, like in Tomb of Annihilation, I'm going to tell you the story of the 9 gods. Obviously, that's something you want to remember. Even me, with my very quick note-taking skills, I cannot write all of that and possibly get all of it down. And all of it is potentially very, very, very important to the game. So what that DM does is they copy and paste it and they put it in chat, right? And so that's, I think, probably like the safe word. I said it, I put it down in the chat. What you do with it is up to you now, because you have the opportunity now or later after we've finished the session to go back and copy all of that down, take a screenshot of it, whatever. But you have the opportunity to commit that to memory better than you did in the game, instead of stopping the flow and immersion and saying, hey guys, take out your pens and pencils. I'm going to say something very important right now, you know? But I think even you, Jason, I think that you've done that before. And you even have given us documents of lore, right? Hey, this is going to come up in game. You might want to go back to this document and reference it. Just lore about the world.
Yeah, I did that with Dacia's character a lot. I was like, here's these books or these pages that you found that sort of give you hints towards what's really going on in the background of the situations that you finding yourself in. Which it's a great way, because if it's like an image that is created and unique to the campaign and the story, then it's a little bit more exciting to keep and refer to as the game goes on, rather than just like a note in the book where you have to flick through pages. If you've got a hand as a personalized little item, then it's always there in your inventory then to just click open.
Making use of the inventory for stuff like that is very, very helpful for people like me specifically anyway.
I will say I like the idea of being kind of told, oh, this is important and you need to know it, because there are times when I feel like I just completely missed that, and I feel maybe it was important and I'm gonna be less useful to the group because I just haven't connected these dots. But at the same time, in the campaigns that I've been in, when I have missed something and other players have like found their way around to it, and it's almost a complete surprise to me, I've actually really enjoyed that process. Like we don't all have to know exactly the same stuff, and some people in games, some characters are going to be better at perceiving things or at understanding things or at working out the roots of a plot line. But that's also true for us as players, and I'm okay with that as long as it's not to the detriment of the table as a whole.
That's interesting, and it's so, I mean, I guess I'll just ask you 3 point blank. Surprise, it's my turn to ask a question. I get self-conscious actually about my note-taking, and I wonder if there are people like, okay, Hermione Granger, or like, oh God, here we go with another fucking Kristin recap. Like 4 hours later, we have all information that we didn't necessarily need, or yeah, maybe it is more about her character versus everybody else, or why the hell did she just say like, so-and-so dropped a pencil and picked it back up again? Like, why did she think that that was important to write down and then tell us back again? How annoying is it to hear a recap of the notes like I take? I mean, I know that people ask me to recap, and I think, but sometimes I go, well, maybe that's because they filter through all the other baloney that I say to pick out the key points.
No, I don't find it annoying at all.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think everybody needs a Kristen in their group, because the recaps you give and stuff are so detailed, and I think it just even like after being away for a week, and I know sometimes games you miss a game or something, but when you come back and you give a recap that's that detailed, you go, yeah, this is exactly where were. I know exactly what we were doing. Let's get to it. And I think that's a massive help and a bonus, and I think note takers, player wise, they are so underrated and undervalued. And if you've got an amazing note taker, you need to take care of them as best you can, because yeah, they are an invaluable asset. And
You're saying I
even
can't
to the
give them trauma.
no, you can still give them trauma. That's part and parcel of it. But yeah, they're just such a good asset, even to the DM. Like I know as a DM, I was going to bring this up after. Like, how do you guys find taking notes as DMs? Are you able to take them quite quickly and get down everything you need to when players put you on the spot and do things unexpected or come out with things? So having someone who catches all that, if I've missed it because I'm having to roleplay something and can't get to it and then forget about it, that's amazing that I can just get that information off Kristin and put it into my notes.
Yeah, my only thing about it is that, as I said, sort of alluded to, I worry that I'm going to become reliant on you, and that's not fair to you. That's my only issue with it. And I appreciated actually that when I ran my campaign, you started off doing very thorough recaps. You knew how. It didn't bother me that my players didn't make notes, but it was a running joke that they didn't even remember NPCs' names within the same session because they literally wrote nothing down and didn't really listen to certain things. And you stopped sort of giving them quite a verbose rundown and made someone else do it first, just so that they started engaging a little more. And that was really cool. But yeah, I agree with Lee, having someone who has those notes just in case. And we'll come back onto it in a little bit, but whether you share them or not is a totally different story. But the fact that there is someone who has them is invaluable. I am interested to, Lee, you brought up the kind of next topic, and I'm interested to hear it. How about as a DM? Do you guys note down absolutely everything, or do you expect the players to take some responsibility? For example, when they receive a super cool item, is it up to them to remember that they've got it, and you don't even, once it's gone, you don't care? Or do you note down absolutely everything? I mean, I know that when I run sessions, I try to take notes about what worked and what didn't, even, so that if I run it again, I can make small adjustments. And I try to note down information given to players and items received and a general overview of important events. But like I say, making notes is a challenge, and that disconnects me. So I'm fairly light on my note taking as a DM. But how about you guys? How important is it that you keep a record of what's happening?
Go on,
go on,
you go
you
first. No, you go first.
Oh my God, rock, paper, scissors for
You
it,
go
guys.
first. I really liked the only information I'll put down, things that they do that are unexpected. If they've stumbled upon a location that was a secret or something like that I had in the back of my mind ready, but it wasn't fully prepared, and they've gone into it, and I need to take notes. Similar to the last session we had in Grasping Beyond, they went to the Elven archives, where they got loads of information and was only supposed to be there for a short period of time because there's only elves allowed in, and they did well. They played their part and managed to get a pass in and get a lot of information. Now I was ready for some of the questions they were asking because it was hinted at beforehand, but the list of stuff I got was just all over the place, and there was no way I could be prepared for that. So I just made a lot of it up on the spot and ran with it, and it went well. But I had to write that information down to make sure that if it does come up again, I'm prepared and I go, well, yeah, this is what you got. So, yeah, information like that I'm not prepared for, that the players are giving me or need, and I have to make up on the spot, I will write down and note take so I've got it somewhere that then I can put into my folders online. So, yeah, that's about as thorough as I get with note taking. I won't note take items and stuff that they find because I just put them all on there for them to see. So they should have access to them, and then it's their responsibility if they want to use them or not, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of running your own game in a sandbox world and doing it is that whatever you say is kind of true anyway.
Yeah.
And it's from your point of view and the world that you're building, so it's kind of hard to forget. Because if you think about the same situation again, you're going to come up with the same answer because you're the same person and basing it all on the same world information. My notes are only ever how it impacts what's going to come up in later sessions. If I give a player an item, that's their item now, and it's their responsibility to remember that they've got that item. Because it doesn't bother me if they don't use it. But if they miss out on using it because they forget, that's their own fault. They can either use it or they don't. But for the session that we did, a side session for Kristin's character, I've only got notes in here that will potentially alter what you guys encounter or have to deal with in the future, like kill a wizard on loose, dead turtle somewhere, a bunch of other prisoners on the loose, which will mean that in the world, to make it feel more lived in, I have to do now like wanted posters or crier announcements in the town. So it's how the only note I really take is how they influence the world to change. Any information that they get given or any items they get given, I kind of put that on the players to remember, because it's if they don't remember, we can always continue going forward and they stumble over it rather than having to put it all together straight away. The best thing about the sandbox games is that the story can always twist and turn depending on what the players do, and I can always make them the focus. So regardless of how much note to take or how little, I'll always adjust the game to be them center focused anyway. So the information and items notes just aren't important to me while I'm playing the game.
I, as a player, am curious. So I feel like note taking must be different in a sandbox game, like a homebrew game, versus a pre-written module, right? Because you already kind of have some notes in a pre-written module versus you're kind of making it up as you go or right before the session. But in that instance, do you write notes for yourself before the session, right? You must.
Yeah, but like the notes before the session are kind of just plot points for me. They're not like notes, it's a plan of plot points. Process Juniper. There's a turtle in this game called Greg. In the yard, there's going to be a fight. The guards are going to talk about something that they want to take note of.
Right, but I mean, even those are notes just like Joe writing down chalice and getting
Yes.
back to it later. Those are bullet points. They're not, paragraphs like some people feel like they need to do, but they're still notes. I think that's interesting to have notes beforehand. If I were to do it, I would, me being me, I would definitely have to do something like that to keep myself on track. Like, oh, hey, don't forget that Greg is here. And don't forget that Greg has this really amazing voice that you're going to really regret by the end of the session. Don't forget that so-and-so is going to start a fight in the yard. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those notes are kind of... I improv probably 95% of our sessions because I know the world in my head anyway. The notes are only if, I'm stuck and all the players are doing this roleplay thing. I'm going to take a glance to see what's coming up or what I can potentially tie in with what they're doing currently. And because the order that's written down is not necessarily the order that you guys are going to encounter them. Even though I'd planned it that way, I always leave that room to switch it round. So you were supposed to overhear the guards outside the door first, talking about stuff, and then going into the yard. But you ended up going into the yard first, having the fight, just because it felt better narratively.
Because Lee, I think, is the real.
Yeah, I mean, he just straight up started the fight, but it's
somebody was an antagonizer.
But yeah, I think having loose notes like that prior to the games, it's better to just keep it sandboxy and go, these are happen, but just don't be so hard stuck on them happening in a particular order or even at a particular place. The guards overhearing it could have been for tonight's session where the whole group's back together and you just pass a couple of guards in the street who mention the information that you got. It's
Mm.
the notes aren't extensive enough to say, oh, if it don't do it at this point, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think the two of you, Kristin and Jason specifically, are one of the reasons I ended up DMing a game at all, because Kristin, you were demanding it, and I was very apprehensive. And one of the reasons I was apprehensive was because of the notes and the need to feel prepared. And Jason, you said very categorically to me and showed me some of your notes for some of the games you were running at the time, and said you don't have to be totally prepared. It's okay. And I was more prepared than I really needed to be, but I think I've downloaded some pre-written homebrew modules on Foundry and have always been massively intimidated because of the amount of notes and material in them, and it makes me feel like initially it made me feel like that's how I should do it. And then I've run it and it's like, oh no, I can do this with a couple of maps and some bullet points and it'll be fine.
Over time, you start to learn, like, I don't really need all this information. As soon as I get a new adventure, I go, where did they start? Okay. Where did they finish? Okay. Everything else that happens between that point and that point, I can wing. Because as long as they end in the place where they're supposed to end, the stuff that happens in the middle is no concern directly to me. I'll only reference the book when I'm like, are they going really off board at this point, or are they going really off track? What situations are in the middle here that I can throw in to pull them back to the main storyline? And if you're doing a long kind of campaign like that, and it comes with time, I'm not saying like you could just start DMing and do it that way. Run a module first and find this out for yourself and just gain that information and the experience, and at that point you can start winging the middle bits as long as you feel comfortable to then always bring them back to that main storyline.
We never go off track. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Sure. Doesn't happen, does it? I feel like this question is going to feel like it's pointed to a certain person and it's not. But do you guys? How do you feel about sharing your notes? I mean, most DMs I've seen do a recap of the last session's events, and often that's performed by one of the players, especially if there's someone, Kristin, who can practically do minute taking on a professional level. But what about other notes, especially when it comes to things like uncovering mysteries or understanding underlying plot lines? How much do you guys share the notes that you've taken with your fellow players?
Depends. I mean, if it's specific to my character only and my character's someone who wouldn't share this information, wouldn't share the notes. 9 times out of 10, though, I'm more than happy to share my notes, but you guys have seen my handwriting. Good luck trying to read it. It's barely legible for me when I go back and read over it.
Yeah, I don't mind people seeing my notes either. I definitely don't have the patience or motivation to type them up like I know Kristin does to share for people. I just don't. I can't. I've written it down now. I'm never doing it again. My brain just doesn't work that way. If I do a repetitive task and do the same thing again, I just lose interest. So the notes are always paper for me. So I can take pictures and send to people if people want it, or if they can ask me a question, I've got the answer written down. I'll happily provide it. But I don't type them up as a document and send them to people. But they're always freely available for anybody who wants access to them.
I guess it's my turn to answer this question. So I don't mind sharing my notes, and actually, so in the very beginning, very beginning, I had group notes, and then I had a journal for my character specifically, where I would go through the session and I would journal my session as my character. Just things that were important for her, how she was feeling, any sort of bonds that she felt that she was creating, stuff like that. That was also the campaign that was recorded, so I would have to play the session. I would be able to make the journal for myself directly afterwards, but then have to re-listen to the playback and make those notes afterwards. And so that got very old very quickly. So I stopped doing my personal journal. But I would then take notes for campaigns that weren't recorded. I would take notes and then I would type them up for everybody. Then I found this really cool thing. It's called a Rocket Book, where I can write my notes down, take pictures of them, and it will upload them to the cloud, but it will also create a PDF and a Word document based off of what it was able to transcribe from my handwriting, right? And so I'd have to go through and do some edits there. But then I'd have to remember to actually take pictures of it and upload it and edit it and whatnot. And I don't know where the heck that notebook got put, but for one reason or another, I stopped that. I also now have these other notebooks that apparently I can take pictures of and it will upload them, but just the picture of what I've written down. And that's fine. I'm always happy to share that. What I do, though, there are some times where I'll have like side missions or things that I've whispered to my DM and things that I'm doing. I won't share those things. If we're doing a recap, I will absolutely leave those parts out because those are parts that I want to be kept secret. So I'll share what I think is pertinent to the group, and then everything else is for my eyes only. And I have them highlighted in my notebook.
That makes sense. And I think I'm asking it almost selfishly from a point of perspective as, like I say, I struggle to take notes. And I am very grateful for the way that everyone shares what they have written down. But I'm always very conscious that I don't want to be that guy who's always like, oh, what was this that was happening? And who said that? And when did we do this? And like, just ultimately expect there to be a minute taker.
Well, I mean, I'm, as you know, the note taker, I will just say to that point, because I feel bad if other people feel bad, because, right, if you're in a group and you're lucky enough to have a cleric, you're going to depend on the cleric to do the healing. I saw that face, Lee. But you're going to depend on because that is that person's role in that group, and that's what they've chosen to take on. If I've chosen to take on note taker, that is something that I'm comfortable doing. Nobody put that on me. And if I'm choosing to share that, that's something that I'm choosing to do. I don't feel obligated to do so. And, there are times where I always feel like I don't want to be that person. Yes, I can. I have them here. I'm more than happy to give you this recap. But if anybody else at any point in time wants to do the recap, go for it. If there's something really important that I feel like somebody needs to know, like, hey, Jason, your character has Shield of Faith up and you don't remember that, and I don't want you to not remember that, but I've just so happened to have written that down, I'll fill that in for you. But I'm always more than happy to let other people use me however they'd like, and then not use me when they don't feel like they need me,
I've just realised I have this unfortunate personality where, for example, last night I completely forgot that I had an item that could have been really useful and didn't use it, but remembered absolutely that we all had 12 temporary hit points because of a thing that I'd done that should have run out. And we have a very gracious DM who reminded me of the item that I had and didn't scold me for giving everyone temporary hit points when we shouldn't have them. But yeah, I have this weird personality where I seem to remember the stuff that's not really useful to us as players and forget the things that definitely would be handy. I know the answer to this already, so I'm going to ask it as if I don't, though. Do any of you use anything like a Kanban board to share notes actively within a campaign?
What?
A Kanban board. So anything that's like a note sharing system where you can all log in and see notes splattered on a screen or anything like that, so that you can kind of keep track of either plot lines or events or just items or characters.
Yeah, we started that in Tomb of Annihilation, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We used the mirror board to put everything up, all the information.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and then it stopped.
Yep.
But
I mean,
yes.
we got the Google Docs, and I know, Kristin, you're on the Google Docs quite a lot, and sharing those to people. I mean, I know my Discord group chat, there's a thing there for you guys just to talk in, and if you want to put notes into there, just copy and paste them directly into the Discord chat. I'm fine with that as well. So I think Discord can be utilised in that way, because that's where we most of the time meet there to voice chat anyway, so it's open in the background. If you want to just copy and paste any information or even screenshot and paste the screenshot in there, as a visual reminder.
Yeah.
I'm down for Discord to be used in that way. It's what it's there for.
I mean, Lee, you did that in the return. You
Yeah.
had a whole section
Notes.
that was
Yeah,
just
whole
the
note taking
recap.
section. Yeah,
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
doing that. And then it just got too much. I don't know how you managed to do it every week, but
For
trying to go
multiple
through,
games.
find
I know.
yeah,
Insane.
trying to find time to go through all my notes and everything and put together a recap each week and dock it down in a journal. Yeah, it just got too much for me. So just stopped doing it.
It just so happened to coincide with when I joined. Also, just wanted to point that out. But yes.
Yeah, luckily.
So do we think that the Miro board stopped for the same kind of reason? It just became too like it's not where the game was happening. People aren't going there regularly, and it's a lot to keep up with.
I'm going to let Lee answer first because I have a very specific opinion on why it stopped.
For me, I didn't really interact with it. I put bits in it, but then my main character died, so I thought,
Don't talk about it.
no, I'm not going to carry on it. So I just left it. So yeah, it just didn't. It felt weird coming in as another character onto the board with information.
From my perspective, I was still, that didn't prevent me from taking my own notes during the game, right? So I've got my own notes that I'm taking, and then I was good about uploading things to the Miro board and putting a sticky here and making this graph chart over here and doing this thing over here and putting a map over here. And then I started to realize that like it became Kristin's Miro board instead of the collaborative board that it was supposed to be. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, well, if I have my notes right here, I don't need to also be putting my notes over here when I don't even know if other people are looking at it. People definitely aren't adding to it. So I'm going to stop. And if other people want to start to interact with it again, great, I'll start to add to it again. But I don't need to be the sole, like, note taker over here and then put that all onto the board. It's redundant for me.
It's
right?
a lot of like
And-
executive function that is going to waste. That can be
Yeah.
put better somewhere else and be more productive.
It might have been better to have like just say, oh, we've got half an hour spare, let's jump on and start adding to this board, and then
Yeah.
as a group all get on and start doing it that way. That might work better. But yeah, for me, I just use my notes.
I love the idea of it. I love the idea of it because I
if-
love when I hear other people recap. I love to hear what they thought was important and look through my notes and go, I had all these things written down. Was that really important? I love looking at other people's notes. So the idea of the Miro board was great for me. And visually, it was kind of cool, right? I could go over here and we had that section that was like the shit list, and we had people who were on the shit list. And, you know, these are the pets that Magic of Time has collected along the way.
Yeah, that was a sore point.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea. If your group can make it work, I think that it would be a great asset. But it shouldn't just fall that specifically, because that's a big undertaking. It's not just writing things down, it's making it visually pleasing and having a flow and all of that. That shouldn't just fall on one person unless they adamantly want it. So
Agreed. And actually, one of my very good friends, Chris, Jack Mills on the server, is constantly showing me apps and programs that are really, really good for note taking because he knows how much I struggle. And always I look at them and I think this is great, but I just don't know that. As Lee said, it becomes a lot. It becomes a bit of a job. I love that idea though of like after a session just saying, hey, have we all got 10 minutes to just quickly like throw some stuff out? And if everyone does a couple of things all at the same time, we're not going to be overlapping notes because I'm going to be making notes about the encounter while you're making notes about the, there's some wizard that we met, and you're going to be making notes about the region that we're in, and like just quickly 10 minutes putting all that information together in one place. That's a really cool idea. But yeah, like you say, there's a danger of it falling on one person, and that's no bueno.
I mean, but like you said, if it's a 10-minute thing, in some of the campaigns we do a high and low at the end of the campaign. Like we sit at the end of the campaign, or at the end of the campaign, at the end of the session, and talk about the session. That could be done while you're also doing that, or in place of. I think that extra, ending 10 minutes early to do this could be really valuable to people who don't have somebody who's got OCD.
Yeah. So sometimes while we're talking about like the collection of notes and sharing, sometimes when groups of players don't take notes, they struggle to connect the dots, either in a little puzzle or even in a larger plot line, or simply forget what could be important information. As DMs, how do you deal with that scenario? Do you punish them, or do you sort of try and gently remind them? How do we deal with players that have completely lost the plot in terms of note taking?
That's a tough one. Because you want to see the story progress and you don't want to punish them too much. But then again, if it's information they should have put down, it's information they should have put down. I haven't had players, so I can't really speak to having players who don't take some notes at least. And they'll usually go, yeah, I remember such and such thing, this is tied to that, but I can't remember specific about it. And I'm more than happy to spoon feed them the information that they would have got from that and give it back to them. Because I know sometimes it can be a lot of work to, like, it's something that maybe happened in session 2 and you've got like 30 pages you've got to flip back through and read. Rather than take away from the game and punish them that way, it's just easier to go, well, yeah, rather than you go through your notes, this is what you would have remembered, and do it that way.
Would you ever make them like have an implication that their character has also forgotten and make them do history checks to see if they, or anything like that, or do you just put it down to that it's the player who's forgotten, so it's the player who will?
Yeah, I put it down to the play. It's the player trying to sort of juggle and do a lot of things. And if, like I said, if you're going all the way back to session 1 or 2 for some notes, it's a long way to go when you're 20 sessions down the line.
I agree with Lee. It's if a player is looking for the information, I tend to just give it to them. If it's like story focused, if it's like an item, for example, I'm like, that's on you. You got the item in your inventory, you can look for it. If it's story building information, I will just kind of give it to them, because taking note is also pulling you, like me and you both know this, Joe, pulls you out of the immersion of the game. And I know some players want to be fully immersed for the entirety of the game, so just don't take notes. They don't mean anything bad by it. They want to remember the stuff, they just can't executively do those things at the same time. So I'm very lenient. I go, I've given you this information previously. There's no harm in me just reiterating this information again.
Yeah, I've seen on both sides of the book, I've seen players and DMs kind of forget that, as much as anything else, time works differently in game to in real life. Right?
Yeah.
I've seen players who have not noted down or have forgotten something from a session that happened a couple of days ago, and make a big fuss at the DM and say, "Well, it was only a couple of days ago. I just forgot." My character would know. My character would know, and the DM's like, "No, but this in game that was like 3 weeks ago, and your character, if you didn't take note of it then, they definitely wouldn't know about it now." But also on the flip side, where it might have been 3 months since you last played because of scheduling issues, and even if you've taken notes, finding and connecting the dots in what you've written down and connecting it to something you did a quarter ago is a challenge. But I've seen DMs be like, "Well, this was, for your character, this was only yesterday, so they should know." And it's like, well, so it's interesting.
I feel like being like that, though, it makes the player go on the defense and go, well, I'm just going to pick a feat like Keen Mind, where I always know what time of day it is and I always can recall information. And then you kind of forcing the player to take like a feat just so you can get past the bullshit of, oh, you didn't take notes. But so you can go, well, my character's got this feat, so I will remember it, regardless of what your opinion is on the note. So give me the information. And it becomes standoffish, and I just don't like that. It's not a healthy game, in my opinion.
Yeah, it puts it as like player versus DM then, where it's supposed to be a collaborative game rather than a versus game.
From the from the player side, of the player who takes ridiculous notes, sometimes an instance like that can get frustrating because I know I have it written down. I don't remember exactly which session it's from. This particular notebook right here has like 4 different campaigns in it. So I've got to quickly rifle through, but I don't want to take time away from other people while I'm trying to look for it. And I know the DM knows that I have it written down. Like if I'm asking, they know that I have it written down. Any DM that I'm playing with knows that
I can
if I go,
confirm.
I've got the answer. And if you're making me struggle and you're making me waste time in the middle of the game that we already, don't get enough of because of scheduling issues, that gets really, really annoying. But I mean, I'm not everyone else either.
Yeah, I totally. If Kristen has ever got a question in my game, I will just give Kristen the information because 99% of the time she has got it written down and she just wants the information fast so she can get back into immersing herself in the world and portraying that information out. So I like to hand, and sometimes I'm like, oh, she might have it on her, so I'll give it a second. And then if I feel like she's taking a little bit too long, I go, oh, here's the information, I'll give it to you because I know you're looking for your book right now rather than immersing yourself in the story.
The benefit of taking notes digitally, which I don't, but when I had those digital notes, is I could just Control F and type in whatever, and it would bring up all those instances in that document, and it would make it much easier for me. But since I stopped doing that,
that concept of Kristin knows benefited me as a DM as well, because when I ran my first campaign, I was still trying to take notes and not necessarily engaging 100% because I had to get things down, but also learning along the way. And there were times when my other players would ask a question about something that they'd either seen or done or picked up or whatever. And Kristin, you would, if I paused for more than a couple of seconds, I was grateful that you would essentially interject and be like, "Oh, it was this," and I would not question it. I would just be like, "Yep, that's right," because as Jason says, if you're saying it, it's because you've written it down. We can trust that you have written it down. You do know the answer, and actually, as a DM, that can be super helpful. With that though, Kristin, how do you feel? And it's, as you say, slightly specific scenario for you because we know that you take notes, and you know that we know that you take notes. But how do you as a player feel about asking the DM to clarify or remind you of information that they've given before and that you either didn't write down for some reason or can't find in your notes?
I get frustrated with myself because I have it written down, and it comes down to me being frustrated with me about my memory, which is why I take the notes that I take in the first place, right? I take the notes that I take because I struggle with my memory. And if I can't find it in my notes, which I'm trying to substitute for my terrible memory, then it's just, it creates a bigger frustration for me. Thankfully, there's not a single DM that I have or have, that I currently have or have had in recent history that I ever feel really bad about asking. And I don't feel like anybody's given me any flack for having to ask. But it gets, that's just a personal thing. It gets very frustrating for me if I don't remember, because I'm like, that's the reason that I do what I do. And if I can't recall it and I can't find it, then what the hell am I even doing? Like, I wasted my time writing all of these notes down. But yeah, that's a me.
And Jason and Lee, aside from it being Kristin who asks, because we know that she'll have written it down, presumably you guys are okay with people kind of coming to you and just asking, "Oh, can you remind me of, or can you clarify of?" Like you've said that you would just pretty much give them the information to keep the flow moving, but how do you feel about it when players come to you and say, "I just don't remember that information"?
I don't mind it. If it's
don't take
written
it to
down,
heart or nothing like that.
and you know the players and you know what they will do with the information. Often, if I get asked later on to clarify something, I add more detail to it as well, because I start adding bits of the lore in that I wouldn't do mid-session because I want to keep the flow going. But that clarifying question later on goes, oh, well, I can expand on it a bit now, and I quite enjoy that expansion of the information.
Yeah, and it does seem like if they are picking up on points like that, can you clarify something like this? That you've drawn their attention into something so that they seem more invested in it. So it can be a nice thing to hear from your players. Can you expand on that? Because I'd like to know more.
That's a really cool perspective. I'd not thought of it from that angle. So to round us off, the most direct question I can possibly ask: are notes actually important? Like, can you play and not take any notes at all without in some way ruining the game for all the other players because of a certain amount of reliance on them? Or is it okay to, as you say, if you lean on your strengths and weaknesses, and if you know you've got a good note taker, is it okay? Are notes really important in tabletops?
Depends on the game. And I mean, that's a cop out really of an answer. But if you know you're going into a campaign where it's just going to be a murder hobo campaign or it's an evil campaign, and the end goal is either just to kill as many people or destroy a town, the notes aren't that important. You don't need the notes. You know what the end goal is, and getting there can be whatever way you desire to be. When it's more of a sandbox game and it's a co-opted storytelling, and you don't know what the end's going to be, at that point the notes become very important because it's what you're going to start referring to in order to what's coming up next in the game. Or that's from a DM perspective, but from a player's perspective, you start to piece the puzzle together with the notes. If the campaign's based around what is happening here, we don't know as a player. We need to find out. The notes then become important.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to add to it. I mean, you can get away with you can get away with not taking notes at all. Probably would depend on you as a player as well. If you've got really good memory and you can just memorize your sessions and from week to week, you don't need to take notes at all.
I've got one of those like trigger memories. Like I'll completely be out of my brain, but someone mentions something that is adjacent to it. I go, oh, okay, yeah, I know where I'm at now. So the note, I very rarely refer to the notes at the beginning of a game, because I know once it starts going, the memories kind of trigger back anyway, and I've got the references in the back of my head to go forward. It's only when it's specific information, like somebody's name, I'm like, oh shit, that's like 6 pages ago. I'm gonna have to pull that up. And at that point, I'm like, what was his name again? Because I'm just gonna flick through a book for 10 minutes anyway, trying to find it.
For me, it's very important. If I miss like 15 minutes of a session, I stress out because I wasn't there to take notes about it. It like if I was just able to listen and take notes and I couldn't actively participate, I would be okay with that. But for me to not be involved and be able to listen to it and write it down stresses me. I forget missing an entire session and having the group continue on without me. Like, I have Lee's like, yep, I've been through those panic attacks with you before. I get very seriously panicky about it. I don't take notes during a one shot, but then sometimes one shots turn into 2 shots and 3 shots, and I go, oh my God, I didn't take any notes, and there were all these things that I needed to remember because now it's out of my brain because it's 2 weeks later or a week later or even the day later. But yeah, if I'm in a one shot, sometimes I will haphazardly do that, like chalice, and write down chalice so I can look at it right then, because nothing else has happened in my life in the meantime to take up that disk space that is so precious up there. But yeah, super important. I do begrudge a little bit people who don't take notes because they don't have to. And I've said it before, like, I can't believe you don't. It stresses me out. But that's because that's me, and it stresses me out not to do it. And I'm jealous. That's what it comes down to. I'm jealous of you people and your big brains and your memories that function properly.
Well, if it helps, I am neither a person with the big brain with the good memory or the person who can take the notes. So you can just take that as you will.
Well, thank goodness you have a Kristin.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, that's about all time we've got for today. Thank you so much, guys. I can't wait to try and put some of what we've talked about into practice. Maybe even start a mirror board for Jason's campaign, because I'm already losing my mind over the amount of information we've got in there.
Sorry.
Even though I struggle with taking notes, worrying that it'll impact my engagement and be disruptive, I know that both the DMs and fellow players have my back. Notes can be invaluable, but they do not have to be essential. I encourage everyone here to make an effort to take notes that they are able to take, but ultimately we're all there to just have fun together. And with a little discussion with the players around your table, that can be achieved for everyone, whether you write down every word said verbatim or just a few bullet points that only make sense to the person who wrote it. Thank you very much, Lee, Kristin, and Jason, for your wonderful insights. And thank you so much to all of you for listening. Please leave a comment below to let us know how you deal with notes. And if there's anything you would like to hear us talk about in the future, why not let us know? That's it. Stay cool. And if you can't be cool, be wicked. Bye, guys.
Bye!
Bye.
Wherever you found us today, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content, and if you want to find out more about what we do, how to support us, pick up some merch and find links to our friends like JB Media, visit us at wickedcoolkids.co.uk. Work and give them a follow on Instagram at jbmedia.d and on Patreon. The link